When you see the performance of a great athlete, the act of an excellent musician, or even someone who is considered a genius in some area, it's very common to come to our mind that these people were born with certain gift for that. In other words, they have talent. And what about you? Do you think that you can achieve the same level of those high performance people, even if you don't seem to have the talent for that? The vast majority of us might answer no. But what if it isn't really like that? And what if talent plays a small role compared to other characteristics like effort, perseverance, and a lot of spent time at certain area? In today's video, we are going to talk about the book Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. Hey guys, Yamani Brain here and welcome to our channel. One of the author's motivation for writing this book was precisely to find out what made people successful in certain areas. The common belief was for you to be excellent at something depended much more on your aptitude for that activity than other factors. In other words, you needed to have certain gift for that, or as the book states, talent. The author's saga began through research and interviewing leaders in business, art, athletics, journalism, academia, medicine, and law. Who are the people at the very top of certain field? What are they like? What do you think makes them special? Basically, what she found was that those high achievers had no realistic expectation of ever catching up to their ambitions. In their own eyes, they were never good enough. They were the opposite of complacent. And yet, in a very real sense, they were satisfied being unsatisfied. Each was chasing something of unparalleled interest and importance, and it was the chase, as much as the capture, that was gratifying. Even if some of these things they had to do were boring, or frustrating, or even painful, they wouldn't dream of giving up. Their passion was enduring. In some, no matter the domain, the highly successful had a kind of ferocious determination that played out in two ways. First, these exemplars were unusually resilient and hardworking. Second, they knew in a very, very deep way what it was they wanted. They not only had determination, but direction also. It was this combination of passion and perseverance that made high achievers special. In one word, they had grit. This is one way for the author to say that talent alone is not enough to succeed in something. The author points out that the talent combined with effort generates a skill. In other words, skill is the result of talent as the natural gift or the ease of learning some area, combined with effort, which are the hours of practice, improvement, and perseverance. But if you put more effort in that skill, you will have what she calls success or excellence in that area. It is not specifically written in the book, but we can do that. Success is the result of talent combined with squared effort. It's another way of saying that even if you think you don't have a great talent for a certain area, if you combine it with a lot of effort, you can achieve the excellence in what you want to do. In the same way, if you have a lot of talent but little effort, it may end up with just a potential for something, just a possibility, but it will stop there. As the author says, our potential is one thing. What we do with it is quite another. Of course, we can think of other external aspects like opportunities, having the best coaches, and so on. They have their plate role, but the strategy of the book is to focus on the individual. How a person can stand out depending only on what he or she can do. Okay, but the question comes, how can we develop the grit in our lives? There are 4 elements that together harmonize this concept. The first one is interest. According to the author, nobody is interested in everything and everyone is interested in something. For this reason, combining your work with what attracts your attention is definitely a great idea. It may not guarantee that you will achieve happiness and success, but it's certainly a step in this direction. The principle is, if you're interested, if you like certain activity, there is a great reason to improve it. However, it's not an easy task to find out which area or areas you are really going to show interest in. Just remember when you had to choose
what you study in college or university. Basically, what we have in this kind of situation is a little interest or curiosity, a few information, and the rest is expectation. So it's not uncommon for people to change courses or even graduate and later work with something else. The book even presents a research that shows the level of engagement of workers in several countries. This survey measures how much people are engaged or committed to their professional activities, how much they are not, and how actively disengaged they are, which is the term used for those people who not only don't like what they do, but who may even undermine the company's work. As you can see, there are many people unsatisfied with what they are doing. So, how can you find your interest?
We may have a common thought that this interest or passion will come through some revelation, a kind of love at the first sight. But the cases mentioned in the book are not quite like that. In fact, there is a process that helps to define this interest, and it is experimentation.
Most of the great models interviewed said they had spent years exploring different interests, and the one that ended up occupying these people's lives was not recognized as the first choice of life. So the interest may come from a more introspective attitude as you think about which areas you feel fulfilled in doing, which areas you find unbearable. But in addition, it is essential that you are able to test them. There are many things that seem uninteresting until you start doing them. Starting to practice some physical activity may not be such a stimulating idea at first, but after you start it, can turn out to be something you enjoy. And if you don't like that specific activity, you can try another one. You just won't know if you don't try it. As the author says, without experimentation, it's not possible to determine which interest will remain.
The second item is practice, which is how much dedication you will have to cultivate the interest. There's no way to improve in any area if you do not dedicate time to it.
Now, this progress involves not only the amount of time devoted to a certain interest, but also the quality of that time. This is where the book introduces the idea of deliberate practice, which in short means that you need to dedicate enough time to an activity that you want to develop, but mainly in the areas that you need to improve, not so much in areas you already doing well. There is even a quote from Rody Gaines, an Olympic gold medal swimmer, who says, "At every practice, I would try to beat myself. If my coach gave me 10 hundreds one day and asked me to hold 115, then the next day when he gave me 10 hundreds, I would try to hold 114. You use deliberate practice to track your progress, trying to beat your last performance. If you are a runner, your attention will be at your pace, your distance goal, or some other aspects of your running that you are trying to improve. If you are in business, listen to what Peter Drucker said after a lifetime of advising CEOs. Effective management demands doing certain and fairly simple things. It consists of a small number of practices. If you are a surgeon, consider what Dr. Atul Gawande has said. People often assume that you have to have great hands to become a surgeon, but it's not true. What's most important is practicing this one difficult thing day and night for years on end. If you want to break a world record, as magician David Blaine did when he held his breath underwater for 17 minutes, watch his TED Talk. At the very end, the man who can control every aspect of his physiology breaks down sobbing.
As a magician, I try to show things to people that seem impossible. And I think magic, whether I'm holding my breath or shuffling a deck of cards, is pretty simple. It's practice, it's training, and it's practice, it's training, and experimenting while pushing through the pain to be the best that I can be. And that's what magic is to me. So thank you.
They're not saying that you will manage to improve every day. Sometimes you may step back, but the idea is to practice until you master it.
Until what was a struggle before is now fluent and flawless. Until conscious incompetence becomes unconscious competence.
The most important thing is that you always have feedbacks on how you are doing, work on the weak points, and try to face the frustration feeling not as an indication that you are not meant to do that activity, but harder as a challenge that you need to overcome or an opportunity for improvement. The third point is purpose. At its core, the idea of purpose is that what we do matters to others than ourselves.
The article called The Call of the Wild, Zookeepers, Callings, and the Double-Edged Sword of the Deeply Meaningful Work tells us about a survey done with 982 zookeepers who belong to a profession in which 80% of workers have a college degrees and yet on average earn a salary of $25,000 a year. This survey found that those who identified their work as a calling, saying that working with animals feels like my calling in life, also express a deep sense of purpose, like the work that I do makes a world a better place. Zookeepers with a calling were also more willing to sacrifice unpaid time after hours to care for sick animals. And it was zookeepers with a calling who expressed a sense of moral duty, like I have a moral obligation to give my animals the best possible care. We can add to this survey a parable in the book about a question asked to 3 bricklayers. And the question was, what you are doing? The first one responds, I'm laying bricks. The second responds, I'm building a church. And the third responds, I'm building the house of God. The parable concludes saying this: the first bricklayer had a job, the second a career, and the third a vocation.
One of the reflections that we can take from all of this is that the idea of calling has little to do with the job description. Any occupation can be a job, a career, or a vocation.
Instead, what matters is whether the person doing the work believes that laying down the next brick is just something that has to be done, or instead something that will lead to further personal success, or finally a work that connects the individual to something far greater than the self. So, the way you see your work is more important than your job title.
Of course, the concept of purpose can still be very subjective, but I can speak, for example, of this channel. It was created from the principle of learn and share. There are several things that I study and read which not only resonate with me, but I try to implement them to see the benefits. And I believe that if I share to you, can be beneficial to you too. And finally, we have hope.
By definition of the book, this kind of hope is less about expect that tomorrow will be better and more about resolving to make a better tomorrow.
This type of understanding has a lot to do with how we face the challenges and the difficulties. To get deeper into this topic, we are introduced to the concepts of fixed and growth mindset.
In simple terms, the fixed mindset is the belief that we are born with certain skills, which are our talents, and we could even learn other skills such as becoming good at some sport, playing very well an instrument, or learning to sell better. But we would never be as good at these activities as the people we think were born for that. We would be trying our best, but indeed we know we were not gifted. Conversely, the growth mindset is the belief that we can change. We can learn, get smarter, get better at those areas we think that were not meant for us. If you try hard enough and if you are given the right opportunities and support, we can achieve great things. The great difference on those two mindsets is revealed when we face a setback. With a fixed mindset, we are likely to interpret these setbacks as evidence that, after all, we don't have the right stuff. Basically, we are not good enough. But with a growth mindset, we see challenges, obstacles, and even setbacks as opportunities to learn, to try other solutions, and improve. As the author says, a fixed mindset about ability leads to a pessimistic explanations of adversity, and that in turn leads to both giving up on challenges and avoid them in the first place. In contrast, a growth mindset leads to optimistic ways of explaining adversity, and that in turn leads to perseverance and seeking out new challenges that will ultimately make you even stronger.
So the concept of hope in a gritty perspective involves to recognize that we can get better at things, we can grow, just as we want to cultivate the ability to get up the floor when life has knocked us down. Of course, one thing is to know how we should act, and the challenge lies in turning it into practice. If you read the book, I think you realize, and this is from my perspective, that the author does not thoroughly put the talent away, but definitely gives much more emphasis to practice and perseverance.
As the author says, the book has been about the power of grit to help you achieve your potential. I wrote it because what we accomplish in the marathon of life depends tremendously on our grit, our passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And obsession with talent distracts us from that simple truth.
And this, my friends, is the concept of grit.